If you like Star Trek, you'll love Inglorious Treksperts, in which our Treksperts, Mark A. Altman and myself, Darren Doctorman, talk Trek every Saturday, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hey, this is Mark A. Altman, and if you're a fan of Star Trek, check out my new sci-fi TV series, Pandora, debuting on the CW and around the world on July 9th, starring Priscilla Quintana and Oliver Dench, and you can find out more by downloading the Unboxing Pandora podcast, available weekly wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hello and welcome to the 4:30 movie. It's 1989 week. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with the 4:30 movie podcast, this is a podcast where we curate fantasy theme weeks of classic movies every week, except when we're on a hiatus for the last, 5 months. But
It wasn't that long.
But we are coming back, and if you have been listening to the show, you've listened to such weeks as Gangster Week, High School Movie Week, College Week, In the
Spielberg
Shadow
Week.
of Star Wars Week, Spielberg Week, Halloween Week, Alien Week, thank you, Alien Invasion, Under the Sea Week, Sword and Sorcery Week, thank you. I'm glad
Post-apocalypse week.
This is good. Keep them coming. I don't remember. It's all a blur. So this week is in 1989 week because, as some of you may recall, each year at Comic-Con, we pay tribute to a year celebrating its anniversary. And this year we're paying tribute to 30 years ago, 1989. Wow. And as always, I'm here with our expert band of curators. Starting at the far left is the writer for such shows as X-Men the Animated Series, Star Wars Rebels, and Star Wars Resistance, Mr. Stephen Melching.
Hello. That's loud.
Joining him is a writer for such movies as Thor and X-Men First Class. He's been a writer-producer in such shows as Black Sails, Terminator, The Sarah Connor Chronicles, and also Fringe and Lore, Mr. Ashley Miller.
Courage.
And a concept designer for such movies as Riddick, TV shows like Westworld Season 2, and the visual effects supervisor for Star Trek The Motion Picture Director's Edition, not cut, as we just learned,
That's right.
Mr. Darren Doctorman. And I, of course, am Mark A. Altman. I'm your host, Mr. Rourke. Welcome to Fantasy Island. And we are going to get into 1989 week. The way this works is we program each day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then we attempt to agree on what to program Friday on our fantasy network. So, and running time doesn't matter because unlike the old 4:30 movie where they would cram everything into 90 minutes, in our world, movies can last as long as we want, and they're
Forever and ever and ever.
and they're never panned and scanned. So, Steve Melching, we're going to start you off on Monday. 1989 week begins.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a movie that actually was made in 1987 and was supposed to be released in 1988, except the studio, De Laurentiis Group, went into bankruptcy and was unable to release the film, so it was postponed into 1989. And it's a little movie that could. It spawned a sequel, it spawned a video game, and it continues on to this day with a new film in production. And I'm talking about a movie that can be summed up with "Strange things are afoot at the Circle K." Talking about Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Whoa.
Just an absolutely charming time travel comedy. I'm sure sounds like most everyone here has seen it. You've certainly heard of it. It was a low-budget film. It was Keanu Reeves' one of his first movie roles, although because the release was delayed, he had appeared in some other films that were released first. But it's just a delight. It takes all the time travel tropes and has fun with them and just does some marvelously inventive things with time travel.
It's a smart movie with stupid characters.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's funny, the De Laurentiis Group Dino had
They kinda are.
infamously done King Kong for Paramount in '76. He'd done so many movies. He finally got the money in the late '80s to start his own company, and it was kind of like disaster after disaster after disaster. Everything he put out was just failed. But then there are a couple of gems in there. Bill and Ted, of course, Blue Velvet being the most notable of all of them.
They're basically the same film.
Well, I mean, in Blue Velvet, he only made to get, as part of his deal with Kyle MacLachlan to get him to do Dune, which, of course, he thought was going to be the big hit. And as we all know, it wasn't. But Bill and Ted's a great choice. I think it was name-checked recently in Avengers Endgame. It stood the test of time. So,
And the sequel is in production right now.
The second
amazing.
Sequel, which is exciting, the second sequel. And I should say, on a personal note, I actually own Keanu Reeves' costume from the second film.
What?
So there you go. And it fit me perfectly when I got it. It doesn't quite fit now, but
really, that's a interesting story. How did this come into your possession?
I was working for a kind of a shady company in the in the early '90s, and it was this company that, I don't know if you remember this. There were telephone games you could play. You would dial up an 800 number or a 900 number, and you would press buttons to go through the game. And they were themed around movies. There was a Terminator game and I think an Alien game or whatever. And they had a bunch of prizes that were all these props and costumes from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. And I was working for this dude, and he sent me over to Orion Pictures in Century City to pick up all the swag for the prizes to be shipped off to New York. And my boss said, "Yeah, if you see something you want, you can keep it." Oh. So I drove my little beat-up Datsun B210 over to Orion Pictures and loaded up just all the costumes from Bill and Ted. I had George Carlin's costume. I had the hero guitars that I thought, I can't get away with keeping one of their guitars, a Wild Stallions guitar.
I bet you could.
Yeah, I would have tried it.
And I thought, I'm going to keep the dead.
Not like it was Jimmy Page or something. I mean, you could have.
Who knows if this contest actually happened? I have no idea. But so anyway, I
didn't
have
dial the 1-900 number.
Yeah, so I have the vest that had the big smiley face on the back of it that Keanu wore in that.
You should have worn that today. Like when we did Time Travel Week, you wore the Marty McFly Back to the Future outfit.
It's true.
It's funny that you mentioned Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, because my route to San Diego from Los Angeles carried me through San Dimas.
Whoa.
Right? What's it like to grow up in San Dimas? I mean, that movie must just haunt everything, right? Do you ever get to go to the Circle K in the same way that you did before that movie was released? I mean, do you ever look at a trash can in the same way?
Filmed in Phoenix, but so they didn't even get to actually see the filming locations in San Diego.
Well, that's the unkindest cut of all. No, I mean, that movie is so charming. It's so smart. I can't believe I just said that. George Carlin is a revelation in that movie. He's like the perfect mentor. It's like, if I could ever pick a mentor, it's either George Carlin or Mr. Miyagi. One of the two. I want to see them team up like a buddy cop movie.
I just love the audaciousness of when they're trying to put their plan into motion.
Or you mean bodaciousness?
Bodacious.
They need a set of keys, and they're like, "Oh well, just remember at the end to go back and to get the keys and go back in time and hide them behind the sign."
Excellent.
Like, "Oh, here they are." "Oh, don't forget to do it." Well, we have them, so I guess I don't have to. Genius.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I love it because it's so refreshing to have these very likable characters doing things and reacting to things that you probably would react the same way, given the same circumstances. And it's just so much fun. And, how about a Twinkie Genghis Khan? I mean, that's awesome. I got to see it when I was I was visiting USC, and they screened it, and Steve Herrick, the director, was there. And I cornered him at the end, and I said, "Listen, man, this is an amazing movie you did, and you should be very proud." And he said, "Gee, thanks. I mean, no one actually tells me that it's good."
So it's just the
that's
director
very
of
refreshing.
Critters.
Yeah. But I loved it, and I still love it. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, that's great.
And it's a perfect after-school movie to watch at 4:30.
Totally.
Totally. Perfect 4:30 movie choice to start the week. It's no Bob Roberts, Steve, but no, I'm kidding. So Darren Doctorman, Tuesday. Will it be another time travel movie? Perhaps?
Will it be? I mean, since we're going back to 1989, these are all time travel movies to us. I'm going to pick one that a lot of people forget about, but it was really big and a surprise at the time. It is Joe Johnston's first directorial debut, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. And when I saw this, I saw it when it first came out, and I was actually in Wilmington, North Carolina, working on Exorcist 3. So I saw all of these movies in pretty much the same spot in Wilmington that summer. And it was so, I guess the word is refreshing, that it was a sweet movie, it was a fun movie, it had characters that you like, it had, fantastical things that didn't seem stupid, and it had amazing visual effects, because of course Joe Johnston was one of the pioneers at ILM, and so he knew what he was doing, he knew how to get things to look good, and Rick Moranis is wonderfully goofy, and all the kid actors are not terrible, which is a big feat. And I actually got to work on the sequel, Honey, I Blew Up the Kid, a few years later. But I think none of them were able to sort of get that innocent spirit that the first movie had.
Yeah, which it probably wouldn't have had if the original director had stayed with it. Remember?
Right.
The original director was Stuart Gordon, who had done Reanimator.
Oh, right.
And it didn't exactly seem like the perfect choice for a kids' film, but I think it was his concept originally.
It was his, I think, Brian Usna, I think.
Wow, what a combo. I didn't realize.
Yeah, it was going to be a completely different thing. And I think we dodged a bullet there.
Well, it wouldn't have been a franchise, that's for sure.
Well, that's for sure.
But it might have been just a totally different kind of franchise.
Altogether.
Right. Altogether.
And it starred, Rick Moranis, right? Who was a pretty big comedy star at that point before he basically retired from film acting.
Well, this is post Ghostbusters, and he was, huge, obviously coming off his Canadian,
SCTV,
and Ghostbusters and stuff. And then, he just left the business because I think his wife died, and he left to take care of his kids.
That was after that point because he did come back for the sequel in 1990 or 91. And Matt Frewer, who played Max Headroom, plays the next door neighbor, and it's, the fun thing about it was the first time, we've seen, the sort of giant effects before, the giant blades of grass, giant dirt, giant rocks, things like that. This is the first time that they actually dealt with the liquid water being thicker when they were smaller. There was just something about it that felt really real, and everything felt real, and nothing.
It was scientifically accurate, is what you're saying.
Closer. But it just felt more accurate for some reason, and it didn't look like the Incredible Shrinking Woman, or
with Lily Tomlin,
with Lily Tomlin, with the giant phone that
was 1979 too.
Was it?
Yeah, Lily
Holy
Tomlin.
cow!
Yeah,
It's 40 years ago today.
Oh my goodness. But it was. I really loved it, and it took me completely by surprise. I think it took a lot of people by surprise, and it did really, really well. I think in terms of cost to return, that might have been, maybe Batman did better overall, but I think that one did immensely good business.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I find delightfully surprising about that film. I remember it very well, very fondly, is that it's almost a trope in movies like this that, you have the sort of the beleaguered father character, and they go through the adventure because, he needs to, build this connection with his kids and all that. And it actually works so very well in this film. Like, you really feel like this is truly a movie about a family solving a problem together, and a father reconnecting with his children, which I think is just great. It's there's not a moment in it that feels like it's working too hard for that emotional connection and that emotional underpinning, which just makes the comedy that much better and makes it that much easier to enjoy all the special effects stuff, which can very often overwhelm a movie like this.
It's funny, the only thing I remember about this movie was when California Adventure first opened, they had an attraction, Honey, I Shrunk the Audience.
That's right.
And it was like one of the first 4D films, and I thought it was quite good. That I remember.
It was,
I remember
yes.
that better than I remember the movie. But that was fun.
They put it in
Long
they
gone.
put it in the Captain EO theater.
That's right.
At one point.
Oh, did they?
Yeah,
Disneyland,
they replaced Captain EO with that.
Oh. You know what they replaced Captain EO with? They had the Star Wars Path of the Jedi leading up to Force Awakens. And
man.
it was actually fairly entertaining because it was on a super huge screen. So even the prequels kind of were interesting. So Darren Doctorman, your pick was Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Yes.
Now, this is really interesting. 1989, big year for movies, big year. We've had, two smaller movies, Bill and Ted, of course, still stands test of time. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. I suspect this is going to be interesting because we're going to get to Ashley for Wednesday. Ashley is always the outlier. He always has some
By the
bizarre...
way, we don't know what anyone else is going to pick.
No, we're right. Before we start, we don't know what
conspire.
else is going to pick.
There's no collusion.
And I have a feeling, just knowing Ashley the way I do, that he's going to go the other way this year. That instead of going with the weird cloak and dagger, the bizarre thing, he probably is going to bring us back to the blockbusters. Because I know there's a film that he loved in 1989 that I suspect he's going to choose. But I'm going to let him tell us what film we're showing on Wednesday.
Ghostbusters 2. Kidding. Okay, so 1989, I'm 18 years old, I'm a senior in high school. I've got a favorite comic book character. Spoiler alert. I have every single comic book ever published about this character and any related ancillary characters going back to 1980 flipping 5. Man, no joke, it occupies a wing in my house. To say I was excited is an understatement. The night that I was going to go see this movie, opening night, man, I had to work. I worked in a bookstore in the mall, and my buddy was going to go, and I remember, we closed out that cash register so fast, and we were $150 short. And we looked at each other, and we said, screw it, let's go see Batman. So we did. Tim Burton's 1989 Batman, I think, took absolutely everybody by surprise. Now, I will tell you that it is not my favorite Tim Burton Batman movie. I happen to love Batman Returns. It's not my favorite Batman movie, period. That would be The Dark Knight. But I absolutely adore Batman 89. There was never anything like it before. And quite frankly, even though it changed the way Hollywood thinks about comic book movies and superhero properties and the things that it's possible to do with them, you can feel its presence in so many things. Whether you're talking about Alex Proyas's The Crow, or you're talking about Bilson and DeMeo's Flash television show, which also had a Danny Elfman theme song, and Shirley Walker did the score. Shirley Walker did the Batman the Animated Series score, which obviously was hugely influenced by the 1989 Batman. You simply can't get away from it. I think that I, like most people, was very surprised that Beetlejuice became a very credible Batman, and for my money remains between him and Christian Bale, like the two best Batmen in the history of any of the franchise.
That casting was super controversial in its day. It was the subject of endless articles in fan magazines.
Just think
Mr.
what would have
Mom is
happened.
not Batman.
Just think what would have happened if the internet had existed then.
Oh, good Lord. It's like, you should cast Harrison Ford as Batman. Okay, actually, that might have been kind of cool. But no, Michael Keaton is so great in that movie. He is so insane. My favorite scene is actually not a scene with Batman, but Bruce Wayne. When Bruce Wayne and the Joker meet in Vicky Vale's apartment. You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. Like, that scene is absolutely fantastic. It's feral. It's cool. And I will tell you this much. So apparently, and I didn't know this, in 1989 when this movie was released, it was I think the only major motion picture ever delivered to theaters more wet than Batman '89 was Star Trek: The Motion Picture 10 years earlier. The sound was essentially temp. They used a lot of library sounds, not a lot of original stuff. The mix wasn't great, and you can tell, right? You watch that movie, if you go back and you get an earlier edition of this film and you listen to it, right? It'll sound very stagey. The sound won't have a lot of dimension. It just plays a little weird. So for the 4K release that just came out, Tim Burton went back, redid the sound mix, and he did new sounds for like gunshots, for all kinds of things, and it makes such a difference. It opens up that movie. As big as the visual imagination is on that film, what Tim Burton does with the sound in that movie now opens it up even further and just makes it feel like the big opera that it really wants to be. Also, the 4K transfer is unbelievably beautiful. I can't say enough things about this movie and why I love it, so I'm going to shut up and let somebody else say something about it.
Yeah, I'm not surprised you picked that. I know you have a lot of love for that movie. I'm not a huge fan. I have to say that for me, you know, it was the beginning of sort of the marketing over the movies. You know, I mean, we talked about Star Trek: The Motion Picture with the Happy Meals. Forget that.
Right.
I mean, this was all about marketing.
Yeah.
The movie was like secondary, and
There were T-shirts. There was a Prince album.
you know, we've been doing this every year at Comic-Con, 30 years since 1982, and that went really well, and then we did 1983. 1989 for me is kind of the swan song for the great years of movies. It's like, I think we'd be really hard-pressed.
It's the
going
dividing
forward.
point.
Yeah.
It's really like a key year, because I think once you get to 90, I think it gets, you know, there's a law of diminishing returns. I think that...
It's sort of the first year of the realization of the corporatization of Hollywood.
I completely agree. So I think 1980 year is sort of a really benchmark year, and not necessarily in a good way. And Batman sort of epitomizes all that. I'm really glad you brought up the 4K, because it's true, they were using library sound, and you know, you watch that original trailer for Batman. I mean, it's awful.
Yep.
But you know,
It's
Well,
strange.
you know, I mean, the marketing was huge for this movie. I mean, there were giant billboards on Westwood Boulevard and everything, but there really was an incredible groundswell of support and anticipation for this movie.
Huge.
And I remember seeing it opening night at the Chinese Theater, and they had a spotlight on the screen, and when the curtains parted, we could see there was a bat symbol, and the audience lost its mind. They jumped to their feet cheering. The movie starts, and it's all those kind of abstract images, and the Danny Elfman score, and it builds and builds and builds, and finally it kind of rotates into view, and you see it's the bat symbol. And again, the audience just jumped to its feet, screaming. The electricity in that room was incredible. I've rarely ever experienced anything like that in a movie my entire life. The energy in that theater.
That movie made, okay, so here's how you kind of begin to gauge what happened after 1989. 1989, opening weekend, Batman 89 makes something like $42 million. It was the biggest opening weekend of all time by a long shot. It made over $250 million in its opening run domestically, which was an enormous
30 years ago it made that.
30 years ago, right? And that is the thing that I think everybody has been chasing.
That's when
ever
$200
since.
million used to buy something.
That's right, like Waterworld.
you know, it's funny. A lot of Happy Meals, right? It's interesting because I guess I have more of an emotional attachment to Batman as a character than Superman. So when I saw Superman, I just freaking love Superman. Obviously, it's brilliant. You know, Batman, I actually read the comics. I was really into Batman as a character. You know, I loved the Adam West series. You know, so and this, you know, when you starts with retconning the Joker, that he's the one who killed, you know, Martha Wayne and the, you know, the dad and everything. You know, it's very static. You know, you either love the Anton First world of it or not. But you know, it's very set bound. I mean, I think even Chris Nolan got away from that, where the first movie, it was kind of like very production design, and then it became Chicago, and that seemed to work much better for it because Batman is so grounded and real.
Well, a lot of that was about shooting in IMAX.
Not
sure.
necessarily, though. This goes back to one of the reasons why I really dislike Batman '89.
Okay.
It's because of the production design. When you have Gotham City being this huge, creepy, monstrous thing, Batman isn't scary. Batman's just a part of this. And therefore, it loses all the meaning of this strange, creepy creature that comes out of the sky and takes away criminals. And I think the whole sort of concept of that is just over-designed, and it ruins the concept to me.
See, I love it, and I compare it that well, no, and it's totally fair that it's not your cup of tea, man. And I think you make actually an excellent point. I compare it to the production design in Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, where especially Batman Forever, where Joel Schumacher was trying to replicate
Batman Fever.
Batman Fever, where it simply doesn't work at all. Like there was such a specificity to that production design that only Batman could have gotten away with it. And again, so many movies tried to ape that. Burton himself even changed up that production design completely. Like Gotham City is two different cities between Batman '89 and Batman Returns.
And as the further that run goes, the more outlandish there were these 80-story high statues.
Well,
in Gotham City.
the Schumacher movies are, I think, consciously trying to do the '60s series as a movie. And on that scale, I understand it. But I think they were selling them as something else, and that's why they don't work in our mind. Yeah. But I think everyone's saying that the Burton movie is dark and mysterious. No, it's not. It's just as goofy as the rest of them. And that's the big lie, is that, this is the first serious interpretation of Batman. It's not serious at all when you have Jack Nicholson going around aping
Caesar.
Well, not even. He's just sort of chewing scenery everywhere with his gigantic mouth.
But you also can't, you cannot take your eyes off of what he is doing with that. Like, we just hadn't seen anything like that.
No, that's true.
And, villains that followed, my God, how many movies, it's as many times as Paramount has tried to replicate Khan in a Star Trek movie, how many films did somebody try to replicate who Jack Nicholson played as the Joker in Batman '89 until, weirdly enough, Heath Ledger came along and actually played the Joker in a Batman movie and kind of changed everything again.
Right.
Yeah, he wasn't trying to play an icon. He was just trying to play a character, and that's why Heath Ledger was so effective. Well, before we get to Thursday, I want to point out that we do have a rule on this show, which is if something was nominated or played in another week, we don't repeat it. So there are a couple of great movies that we're not going to talk about. Glory was during War Week, I believe. Was it for War Week?
I believe so.
Yeah, Glory was.
I think
Matthew Broderick.
I actually did that,
for Tuesday. Also for Under the Sea Week, The Abyss. Was picked for the Under the Sea Week. So also The Abyss opened this year. It's a film that Darren worked on, has great stories about.
None of which you'll hear this afternoon.
Oh, you aren't going to talk about how Ed Harris picked you up in this?
I'm not going to say the same story again. People are bored with it.
We don't repeat stories either on the podcast, so you have to go back and listen to old podcasts.
Suffice it to say, it was one of the greatest 16 months of my life.
It's funny because there are obviously so many big movies from 1999 we haven't mentioned yet. I thought about screwing with you and saying Thursday, Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, but I don't think I could get through that with a straight face. And in fact, we actually talk about Star Trek V with great reverence at WonderCon. It's on our sister series, Inglorious Trexperts, where we, I think, do justice. We have David Lowery, the screenwriter, and I think it's a really fascinating listen. So if you're interested in Star Trek V, you should listen to that episode of... also, I must say that as great as that conversation was, one of our lowest rated episodes of Inglorious Trexperts.
World isn't fair.
You can't win with Star Trek V, apparently. But I thought that was fascinating. So
what is your selection, though?
Choose the form.
That's my question.
Okay, well, look.
For Thursday.
For Thursday, yes, for Thursday. And I'm not going to go through a list. There are a
just
number.
Went through. Want to?
There are a number of films.
You wanna.
I so want to. Because, of course, you had Steven Soderbergh's Sex, Lies, and Videotape, which kicked off the decade of great independent movie making.
I almost picked that one, actually.
I was so close to picking that. James Spader and Laura San Giacomo and just really brilliant. But I'm not going to pick it. I am going to pick, and I thought really long and hard. You know, I remember going to see She's Gotta Have It and thinking, oh, Spike Lee is what a great filmmaker. And of course, Do the Right Thing came out in '89. It's such a great film. And I thought, oh, should I go with that? And I'm like, no.
But he's not making a list.
And I'm going through the list. I'm going through the list. You know, and if it had to be great lines of 1989, then I'd go to Lethal Weapon 2 because, of course, Diplomatic Immunity, one of the great lines, and Mel Gibson pulling the house off the mountain.
He's making a list.
But it's
He's
not.
totally making a list.
But it's not Lethal Weapon 2 because, let's face it, that's not a great movie. So I'm gonna go with, this is my pick. Are you ready? Are you ready? Okay. So it's Crimes and Misdemeanors. Woody Allen's brilliant.
Surprising
movie.
no one.
It came on the heels of Hannah and Her Sisters. I mean, this was the decade of just pure genius. Husbands and Wives was yet to come. But in Crimes and Misdemeanors, Commander Koenig from Space 1999.
Are you sure you didn't pick this in a previous episode?
No, I never picked Crimes
I
and
think he
Misdemeanors.
did.
No,
Somebody check.
I never picked Crimes and Misdemeanors. No. I picked Midnight in Paris. I never picked Crimes and Misdemeanors. Anyway, I'm talking about Space 1999. Did you get that new Shout Factory set?
No, because I have all the episodes.
But it's great.
Of course
it's great. And you know, oh my God, and Sylvia Anderson goes on and on about how difficult Martin Landau and Barbara Bain were to work with, and how
I'm sure she was wonderful to work for.
It's a great set. Shout Factory is
maybe
selling
I have
it.
to
I
get it.
highly recommend it. But anyway, Crimes and Misdemeanors. Martin Landau is brilliant. He didn't get an Oscar for it. He should have. He got it a couple years later for Ed Wood. I remember going up to the Saturn Awards and saying, God, you should have gotten an Oscar for Crimes and Misdemeanors. He said, yeah, at least I got one for Ed Wood. So that was good. The thing about Crimes and Misdemeanors, it tells two completely different stories that you think are never going to come together. You know, the whole...
And yet they do.
And yet they do, like Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. You get the chocolate, you get the peanut butter, and it all comes together in a delicious mix.
You get the crime,
Because
you get the misdemeanor.
You get
come together.
You have the Woody Allen and Mia Farrow story that comes together with the Angelica Houston story. But the great thing about this movie, so memorable, Alan Alda as this TV producer, this narcissist, and Woody Allen's making a documentary about him, and at the end he intercuts this footage of Mussolini with Alan Alda. It is laugh out loud funny, but it's such a schizophrenic film in a good way.
If it bends,
it's so serious and so meaningful and so philosophical, and the other story is just hysterical. You know, it's just a comedy. So just a brilliant, brilliant movie, and so that would be my pick for Thursday, Crimes and Misdemeanors.
All right.
Yeah, so... No, I did not pick Crimes and Misdemeanors. I'm telling you, I know what I picked. I never talked about Alan Alda on the show.
So, Mark.
Yes.
I'm going to admit something now. And
You've never seen Batman.
No, I haven't. I just know everything about it. I'm like my kid. No, and I want you to continue to be my friend. But I saw Woody Allen movies at a time in my life when I think I wasn't really prepared for Woody Allen movies. So I didn't love Crimes and Misdemeanors, but the thing is, I want to watch it, but what I want to ask you first
Batman's really a piece of shit. I held back.
There you go. What I want to ask you is, if I were to go back and re-experience the Woody Allen oeuvre, would I begin with Crimes and Misdemeanors, or what would you have me begin? What would you have anybody begin with?
I would start with Take the Money and Run, and then watch every. No, I would start with
Manhattan
Hall.
Manhattan.
Okay.
Annie Hall, Manhattan.
Love and Death. Bananas. Hannah and Her Sisters. Those.
See, I'm the one I'm not a fan of his earlier funny work. I like his 80s Zelig and Hannah and Her Sisters is my favorite.
Husbands and Wives is genius. I mean, Sidney Pollack is great in that. Let's say Anthony. But anyway, enough about that. This is not. We're doing a panel about 1989, and we haven't even talked about some really huge films.
Here's the list.
Now here's another sequel that I know none of us like, and everyone loves.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about this. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. People love this movie, and I know are not particularly huge fans.
Yeah.
After Crystal Skull, I love it.
Yeah. It's Raiders compared to Crystal Skull.
The thing is, it's not a bad movie. It's just not a good movie. And there's a big difference. I love Sean Connery in it.
Yeah.
And of course, I love Harrison Ford in it.
It's just too
It's
shticky and self-aware.
It's just goofy things happen, and it's too on the nose.
It has some great moments.
It has great
Yeah,
moments.
like
but
when he
the
stumbles into
connective
frame,
tissue-
like looking at himself, thinking Sean Connery is like thinking that he's dead, and then Harrison Ford stumbles into frame. That's a great little moment.
But it's probably the worst Spielberg-directed scene
Oh,
ever.
100%. But it's like, but I remember it. You know what I'm
Of
saying?
course,
Yeah.
of course.
An awful mat work, awful visual effects.
And it just looks cheap.
Yeah.
It looks
Yeah.
cheap.
It looks cheap. It does. But yet there's so many great. I mean, Allison Duty is fun in it. You know,
said
it's the
Duty.
Nazi.
The
I
aptly
knew
named.
you were going to say it. I knew you were going to say that. You know, and look, take it or leave it. That opening sequence, I know some people don't like it. The transition from River Phoenix to, you know, I think is really fun.
I think it's fun.
Yeah.
I like
But
the
think it's-
transition. I just don't like the
It's,
sequence before
it's
it.
unfortunate
Yeah.
that all of the recognizable characteristics of the character Indiana Jones happened in like 5 minutes.
Right.
Yeah, no,
when he was a Boy Scout.
Obviously, it's a cheat and it's
Yeah.
silly, but for what it is, it's cute. Let's talk about a couple other movies, and I want to open it up to the audience, and then we
Right.
can decide what Friday is. I mean, obviously, the Disney Renaissance began with The Little Mermaid that year. That was a key year for Disney. It was the rebirth of the Disney animation. It was a huge. People forget. This is the time of the Black Cauldron. This is the time, Oliver and Company, when Disney was for all. I mean, you look at Disney now. I mean, Disney was.
They were
a
on
beast
the
whale. They were
last
dead.
legs. Yeah.
Yeah. If it wasn't for the theme parks and the real estate, they were finished.
Yep.
It's amazing, and Little Mermaid was the beginning of the Renaissance that turned it into what it is today.
In 30 years, they took over Hollywood.
Yeah, even now, time travelers from Warner Brothers are going back to 1988 to disrupt the release of The Little Mermaid in 1989.
We've talked about this on the show before, Back to the Future 2. Again, we're somewhat of mixed minds. Some of you guys love it.
I'm a big fan of
Me
Back to
too.
the Future too. I really like it.
Me less so.
It's better than 3.
It's
That's
better
true.
than The Last Crusade. No, it's better.
It is
But Back to the Future 2, brilliant in terms of just Zemeckis' mastery of the medium.
Oh, yeah.
I think part of what I don't like about it was just how dark it went because for me, Back to the Future, that wasn't the franchise. Also it was very prescient in terms of anticipating Trump, as we know. But it was it's just a very dark and movie, and I hated to see what happened to Marty McFly. So I think I responded to that rather than the craftsmanship. The craftsmanship is exceptional.
Absolutely.
I think it's just the tone that I don't
Just
love.
so cleverly written and constructed, the way
Yeah.
it deconstructs time
No
travel.
question. Field of Dreams.
Yeah.
Obviously, Phil
I love
Alden
Field of
Robinson's
Dreams,
is
yeah.
brilliant. If you build it, they will come. Great movie. Dead Poets Society was a wonderful film that year. And the little film, Phil Noyce, Dead Calm with Nicole Kidman and Sam
Right.
Neill is a great little thriller. Tom Cruise and Born on the 4th.
Or on the 4th of July.
That was a really interesting film. No, I would say that when you go like that, Casualties of War, the Brian De Palma, it's like
That's wacky.
Talk about overbaked and overheated, and
And Michael J. Fox at perhaps his worst.
oh, for sure, the
Yeah.
worst.
Michael J. Fox in his worst performance.
And when we're talking about awful sequels, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the movie that almost killed the Bond franchise, License to Kill.
License to Kill.
Well, everyone's entitled. Timothy Dalton's second and last Bond movie, a glorified Miami Vice episode.
I don't mind it.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. It looks cheap. Talk about awful.
I love him in it.
performances.
We've
What?
had that conversation. I mean, I love Timothy Dalton in it. I just don't
Timothy
love that
Dalton's
movie.
great. I mean, takes it seriously. I mean, he could have been a very interesting James Bond.
And I still love Carrie Lowell.
I think
yeah,
the
for
biggest
sure.
problem, I do too, is unfortunately John Glenn by then was sort of long in the tooth as the director.
The director,
you
not
know.
the. Not
Not the astronaut.
Right. Although it'd be awesome if the
I don't wanna
astronaut
punch-
directed that movie.
But John Glenn, the director, brought no style to it, and Robert Davi's doing everything he can. It's just a prestige.
He's a scenery chewer too.
Wayne Newton, I thought, no, he was terrible. But
And it's probably like 5 different plots going in on that. There's the Chinese, and there's one scene with that, and then it's the first time that Bond quits the Secret Service, and as in any bad Bond movie, there's always a couple of great scenes, and there are a couple of great scenes in Living Daylights, but to me, it doesn't completely hold together. You have the Fabulous Baker Boys, Michelle Pfeiffer, Jeff Bridges.
You said Living Daylights. You meant.
Did I say Living Daylights?
Yeah,
I meant License to
Kill.
Kill. I'm sorry, I meant License to Kill.
Fabulous Baker Boys is a great movie.
It is a great movie. It's no Roadhouse.
Roadhouse. Yeah, Roadhouse. Man, Sam Elliott. Come on. Sam Elliott, George Carlin, Mr. Miyagi. Those are my mentors.
Well, they're all rolled up into one, and you have Patrick Swayze in Roadhouse.
Damn right.
Roadhouse, obviously, choice A, My Way. Choice B, Highway.
Yeah.
There you go.
You have another dreadful sequel, Fly 2, after David Cronenberg's.
Oh, yeah.
Eric's still
Eric
showing
Stoltz.
us why he should have been Marty McFly. Oh, no.
I mean, after Cronenberg, you have Chris Wallace, the special
Wallace,
effects
yes.
Wallace come and direct ill-conceived in so many ways.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah. Weird Al Yankovic in UHF.
UHF.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, my God. You want to drink from the fire hose. I love that movie.
Steve Martin in Parenthood. Spawned 2 TV series. And, of course, Ellen Barkin in Sea of Love, another really intro with Al Pacino. And, of course, it was the year of great team-ups. You either had Tango and Cash or Turner and Hooch. Take your pick.
And we had Major League, the baseball movie.
Major League.
I
that's
love
right.
Major
Yeah,
League.
Major League is really good.
I think we've had that in our previous
When we did
episode.
baseball? No, we did Sports Movie Week. We did
Sports
Sports
movie.
Movie Week.
I think I might have mentioned Major League.
Yeah.
And Field of Dreams might have been on Sports Movie.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay, so let's open it up to you guys. What do you think for Friday? You've heard some. You may have your own. Somebody's going to make a passionate case for Last Crusade. But there's a microphone right there.
right
We
up
have a
there.
few minutes left. Let's
Where
see.
it stands.
So we can pick our Friday.
Waiting.
Our Friday pick. Oh, my God. Nobody is willing to take the heat. Look at
No
this.
one.
No. Here.
Oh, here they come.
Here. Let's see.
Joe versus the volcano came.
Mildred Pierce. What?
Joe versus the volcano.
Interesting. John Patrick Shanley, the very interesting choice.
That is my favorite movie of all time. I've seen it so many times.
Tom Hanks.
I have it on DVD twice. I had it on VHS, and I worked at the movie theater that played it. So
I know he can get the job, but can he do the job?
But you didn't
That's
have it
my
on
question to
Laserdisc.
you.
I just love that he was suffering from a malady called brain cloud.
Yes.
Yeah. Sounds like me.
That's a great pick, by the way, and written by a great playwright and a very polarizing film, but a very
Was
interesting
that John
choice.
Patrick Shanley?
Yes.
Yeah, John Patrick Shanley, who did Moonstruck.
So a film by another great playwright, William Shakespeare, Henry V, with
yes.
Excellent. Now, the problem with that choice, which is a brilliant choice, is we did Henry V in the Ides of March week, where we did great Shakespeare movies, and it was nominated for, I think, Monday.
No, it was Ashley's.
It was Ashley picked, so it was Thursday. It was a normal Thursday for a change. Henry, and he told this really moving story of working with Kenneth Branagh on Thor. So if you haven't heard Ides,
Go back and listen to the
go back to the
movie
Ides
episode.
of March week, because it's a great episode, and his story about Henry V is just fantastic. But he's not going to tell it now.
I'm not.
Yeah, real quick, just as an aside, you talked about Michael Keaton in Batman. In Comic-Con 1988, back in Golden Hall, Bob Kane showed up, and he was selling Michael Keaton to the audience. He actually had some slides up, and he had Michael Keaton's face, and then he drew on it the Batman mask. And he was trying to convince the audience it was a great choice.
That's
and
awesome.
it was a great choice.
To be fair, I think no matter who it was, Bob Kane would have done that.
Would have drawn Batman on the face. For Sammy Davis Jr.
I'm so used to Ashley veering left. I'm surprised you didn't pick Roadhouse. I would have bet the farm on that.
I love Roadhouse, man.
I just saw it 2 weeks ago for the first time ever. And I thought of you. I was like, oh, this is Ashley's pick.
Yeah.
You know what?
That is such an Ashley pick.
If it were not for Batman '89, Roadhouse, for sure.
Well, you already mentioned
Kinda
Major
says it
League.
all.
My other pick would be Black Rain.
Black Rain.
Oh,
Yeah,
Black
good.
Rain.
That's a
Black
good pick,
Rain.
too.
Oh, that's Chocolate Rain.
Ridley Scott turning Japan into Blade Runner.
Hell yeah.
I mean, Sean Connery in one of his later great roles.
Poor Michael Douglas almost choking to death from all the smoke everywhere.
You'd think Tokyo was like on the moors or something. It was just always smoke.
Turn it into Smokio.
But it's like a science fiction movie that's not a science fiction
Right.
movie, Black Rain. But what a fun Ridley Scott movie. Yep.
I've got one for you, filmed in my backyard, Atlanta, Georgia. That's Driving Miss Daisy.
Yeah.
Oh,
Driving
yeah.
Miss Daisy.
Yes.
Driving Miss
Best
Daisy.
picture.
It's funny. I love that movie, but I had seen the play, and I loved same thing I had with Amadeus when you picked Amadeus. I'd seen it on Broadway, and I liked the play better than the movie. So
Interesting.
it's the same thing with Driving Miss Daisy. I really like the play better than the movie, but the movie is quite good. And of course, it was great. Morgan Freeman's great, and
That was the Best Picture winner that year.
and it won the Best Picture. Not sure that was, but Driving Miss
Of course,
Daisy.
Jessica Tandy.
And Jessica Tandy is just great, as she was in everything.
Yeah.
Even Cocoon 2, The Return.
Even batteries not included.
We love your shirt, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is that some sports movie?
Rollerball is
I just want to remind you, there is no sanctuary. Spoiler alert. Okay.
Okay, so if you were working for KCET Channel 39 UHF channel in San Diego, programming the 4:30 movie, and you didn't put a Indiana Jones movie on Friday afternoon, they'd fire you. Because you would pull in the ratings more than any of the other movies you mentioned for an Indiana Jones movie. And it is a really good movie. The pendulum swung from kind of fun to really serious to, okay, a little too much fun, but it's still a really good movie and would really pull in the ratings.
The first part of your argument was
Gotcha.
incredibly compelling. The second part of your argument was less so.
It is a good argument, though. It's a very cogent argument, well-reasoned, and I think it's something we have to take into consideration as we start to wrap up. So let's
Yes,
get the last-
Leela.
Oh, I think this is a great 4:30 movie, Uncle Buck.
Uncle
Buck,
Buck, John
yeah.
Candy.
Oh, I
My
love
name
John
is
Candy
Buck,
so
and I
much.
like to. Oh wait, that's Kill Bill. Never mind.
Well, clearly an audience favorite. And who doesn't love John Candy?
I love John Candy.
So, good.
Oh, yeah.
When you're right, you're right.
Well, you're right. Yeah, well, exactly.
Regarding Batman and the casting of Michael Keaton, I think I had read that he was selected because his eyebrows, if you notice, looks just like Jack Nicholson's, how they're arched. So they both kind of like have the yin and yang going. But anyways,
Bob Kane didn't like that either.
well, he can always draw them, the same. But yeah, I really like Lethal Weapon 2. And it was written, the same screenwriter wrote Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Jeffrey Bohn,
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
unfortunately died in early death.
Yeah.
And I thought, Indiana Jones really did well in terms of dealing with the father-son theme. And yeah, it was hokey and all, but it was satisfying. And
Jeffrey Bohn was the Simon Kinberg of the late 80s. I mean,
Yes, he was.
Lost Boys and Lethal Weapon 2 and Dead Zone, I think, and just he was great.
I think he would have done. He would have done a much better job than Simon Kinberg. I mean, he wouldn't have had a Dark Phoenix.
Yeah, I think we can all agree about that.
Jeffrey Bohm's Dark Phoenix.
But
So we got to make
we
a
got to make a
decision.
choice. We got to get out of here.
There were a couple of huge films we kind of passed over.
Oh, Steve, please,
Ghostbusters 2. Well, I didn't care
No, we
for it.
didn't pass over that. We ignored it.
Yeah.
When Harry Met Sally.
Yes.
Oh,
when
my
Harry Met
goodness.
Sally, brilliant.
And one of my favorite movies of the
Say
year.
Anything.
Say Anything.
Yeah.
And Terry Gilliam's The Adventures of Baron Munchausen.
Oh, my
my
God. How did we
goodness.
miss all these great movies?
Wow.
So great. So great. Do
Man.
we have a consensus?
No.
Not remotely, do we?
I
I think it just has to be Uncle Buck then.
No. I think we have to go to Twitter for this and put up Indiana Jones and Last Crusade, Uncle Buck, 2 other films.
Say Anything.
Say Anything,
Anything.
and none of the above. And
Roadhouse.
And Roadhouse. Yeah, I think we're going to go on Twitter, 430 Movie Pod, 430 Movie Pod. We will put it up and people can vote. We'll keep the voting open for, a week or so, and that will decide the winner. And then we'll air, we'll do an addition to this that we'll announce it on the podcast when we come back in September with all new episodes, right? Does that sound fair?
Yeah,
So-
sounds totally fair.
Yeah, so this will kick
It's the
off
only way to be sure.
our all new.
Take off, nuke
We'll
the
nuke
site
them from
from
orbit. So, Steve, your pick for Monday?
It was, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Tuesday,
Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Wednesday,
Batman.
Thursday, Crimes and Misdemeanors, and Friday,
To Be
who
Decided.
knows? To be continued. So thank you. We'll see you for Starship Smackdown Sunday night. You can visit us online at 430 Movie Pod.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks.
This podcast is a production of the Electric Surge Network.